Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today to attend the Women in Cleantech's Level Up in Leadership Workshop. This is a 2-hour event and part of our Executive Leadership Workshop series, where we come together to openly discuss the opportunities and barriers for women on their leadership paths and help them build the critical leadership skills and provide them with tools and resources that can help them accelerate their professional lives. Today's workshop is spearheaded by Julie Castro Adams, founder and CEO of How Women Lead, an organization focused on advancing women and creating a more equitable world for them. The workshop will provide us valuable insights into 2 available pathways for propelling women into leadership, power, and influence. The first one is corporate board service, and the second one is venture investing. Julie will help explain why these 2 pathways are essential for women to leverage as they focus on career advancements. Next slide. I am your moderator today. I'm Vasudha Latte. I'm a board member at WCS and I'm a vice president at Olivine, a technology and services company where my work focuses on aggregating distributed energy resources for decarbonization and grid resilience. The topic of this workshop is really important to me, as it continues to sadden me that while women represent more than half of the US workforce today, we continue to hold a vastly smaller percentage of leadership positions than men in all sectors. For women of color, the climb to be equally represented in leadership roles is even more painfully slower. And we need to do a lot of hard work to reduce the gender and race disparity. Today's landscape holds significant opportunities to dismantle historic inequities and usher in the improved outcomes for everyone when women take on more leadership positions. So let's dig into this topic more and get started. Next slide. This is a high-level agenda for us today. I will introduce you to Julie in a couple of minutes, and she'll kick off the workshop at around 4:15. We will first discuss corporate boards and then the topic of venture investing, and there will be breakout rooms for discussion weaved in between those 2 topics. And then towards the end, we will all come back for a final event wrap-up. Next slide. Before we get started, again, a reminder on housekeeping items. Please follow proper Zoom etiquette. Be respectful of each other, and we'd love to know more about you. So please write your full name on your Zoom profile and share your LinkedIn profile in the chat window so that it allows the people an opportunity to connect with you during and after the event. This session is being recorded, so you can refer back to it at a later stage. Next slide. So for those of you who are new to WCS, Women in Cleantech and Sustainability recently celebrated its 10-year anniversary. As we grow, we continue to foster a wonderful network of professionals to further the roles of women in the green economy and make a positive impact on the environment. WCS offers wonderful events every month that are both in-person and virtual. We have a strong mentorship program that runs annually, and one of our most popular events is the WCS Talks, a TED-style conference that we do together with Google every year. Next slide. And in the next 6 weeks, we have 4 events coming up and 4 opportunities for you to connect with our community. On August 26th, if you are in the Los Angeles area, join us for an opportunity to learn pole dancing and celebrate a new initiative that celebrates art, science, and sustainability. On September 15th, we are hosting a virtual happy hour to celebrate our volunteers, who are amazing, and we would not be able to run this organization without our wonderful volunteers. September 30th, join WCS for a private screening of The Revolution Generation, the latest documentary of the activist filmmaker team, Josh Tickle and Rebecca Harold Tickle. Finally, on October 7th, as I mentioned, our TED-styled WCS Talks is coming back as an in-person event. WCS Talks features the brightest minds and the most inspiring stories of the clean economy metamorphosis occurring all over the world. This is a not to miss event, so make sure you check it out on the website and join us. Next slide. A quick reminder, want to highlight, we have expanded our membership options and we now offer a virtual membership. As a virtual member, you get a lot of member benefits, such as access to the WCS events calendar, free or discounted access to events, access to member lists, networking, job listings. Virtual members get a 50% discount on our virtual WCS Talk series, and students get an additional 30% discount on membership. And not to mention that our network is now international. And the virtual membership allowed us to expand to an international network. And most importantly, if you join today, you get reimbursed for today's event. So join us now. Next slide. A big thank you to our event sponsor, First Solar. We are lucky to have them sponsor this wonderful event. We also have some First Solar colleagues join us for the event. Thank you very much. First Solar is a leading American solar technology company who manufactures advanced thin film photovoltaics to help advance the fight against climate change. From raw material sourcing to manufacturing to end-of-life module recycling, First Solar's approach to technology embodies sustainability and responsibility towards people and the planet. Check out more about our sponsor, go to their website. And next slide. So without further delay, I really am very excited to introduce you to our wonderful speaker, Julie Castro Adams, the CEO of How Women Lead and the managing partner of How Women Invest. She's an experienced CEO, entrepreneur, advisor, investor, recipient of many accolades, and has been featured in many books. Through her work and throughout her entire career, Julie focuses on providing equity for women, particularly in helping them pivot to leadership roles and help them advance on economic leadership tracks. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you very much. What a treat to be here. I'd love to see everyone's faces if you would be up for pulling the slides down. I want to ask you guys a couple questions. So today, what I really, and I would be on screen if you can, I'd love to see all of you. So I talk about power and influence and leadership all day long. And I've become an expert in it and really kind of want to get a sense of where you're at in your own journey, because I think a lot of us are down with our heads down in the technical stuff. And we don't actually step back and think about how are we going to really advance with power and influence and have the wealth that we all want to be able to have to be able to make the impact we want to have in the world, right? So how many of you consider power and influence in part of your own like plan every January? Is that something that you guys are actively working on ever? A little bit. First, I just want to encourage you to start to put this on your radar. You know, I know you guys know that old adage that your network is your net worth. And I think a lot of us sort of think if we just do a great job, we're going to get all the opportunities that we need. And unfortunately, that's not how it works. We want to change the way it works, but until we do, you guys really need to sort of step into your power and influence. And that's my hope and commitment to you, is to talk about that and really get into playing with that a little bit today. So how many of you, I'm going to put it back on gallery view. How many of you have ever thought about going on a corporate board? Have any of you been on a corporate board yet? Oh, great. Fantastic. Oh, good. I'm going to call on you guys for your expertise. How many of you have looked at your retirement account or any of your other investments and made sure that they're aligned with your values around climate, sustainability, gender? A couple of you? Oh, good. Fantastic. Have you ever invested in a venture firm? Any of you? Okay. Have you ever gotten, oh, one of you has, maybe a little bit, Tamara. Have any of you ever had to go seek venture funding? How fun was that, Ella? Just remember Ella's face, what she just did right now. And that's why we're going to have the second half of our session today, because we got some work to do. Why, maybe a couple words from any of you, why, for those of you who haven't thought about investing in venture or haven't invested in venture, are there any perceived barriers you might have? I know I just started investing in venture, a handful of years ago, and I'm a lot older than the rest of you. Anyone want to chime in and say what's been part of your journey?
I'll go.
Okay, please.
I think that coming from a design and architecture background, the world of venture always felt very sort of numbers based, and the finance aspect of it, until I was able to learn a bit, was really, really intimidating.
Yeah, for me too. Yeah. Anybody else?
I think same what Ella just said. Additionally, also you think you don't have money. Like, right. I don't have money. I'll do this when I have a lot of money.
Yeah, when you have 50 million bucks, 10 million bucks.
Yes, exactly. Of course.
Right. Yeah, it's for later.
Yeah.
How many, anybody else want to chime in?
Deanna said probably finding time to focus on it.
Yeah, exactly. Have any of you felt like, I think that's really for those people. Like, I don't know if I feel welcome. I've never been invited. I've never even heard how you start investing in ventures. Sound right? Yeah. Okay, good. All right. Well, I think I have a lot of good answers for you guys to help you at least reset and think about your own prioritization for all of this. So I'll first tell you, I'm a justice activist, really. I'm all about gender and racial justice. That's my life's work. And economic power is one of the ways I've done that. So I ran a microenterprise and microfinance organization in the US in 22 cities for about 11 years. And that was helping women start their own companies and doing microloans for them. This has been my life work. And what I've done in the most recent years, okay, let's be honest. If any of you running a nonprofit right now, okay, well, it's super freaking hard. So if you're on a nonprofit board, be kind to that executive director. All right, I had to raise $10 million a year from scratch. It's just exhausting. Economic downturns, 2009. You guys remember 2008, 2009? Really hard to run something at that point in time. So when I finished, I said, I don't want to work that hard and I don't want to run anything. Well, that didn't last that long. But what I did realize is we have the first generation of us, women with years of operational expertise, some positional power and influence. There's more of us than there has ever been in any generation for women in the United States. And we have more power, wealth, and influence than we've ever had before. And collectively, we are we control over 50% of the wealth. This is first time in history. So we have a moment in time. And if we leverage all of you badass women, just think about collectively, you alone might feel like what can I do? But collectively, all the women in clean tech and sustainability could do big things. So that was sort of the thesis that I started with, is like, wait, if I get all of us together, the leverage we can have to change the top levels of leadership, the top rungs of the ladder, we have this moment in time to do it. And I'm 55 years old. I'm older than most of you guys, I think. And all my friends are now running the world, right? I may be like a social worker by my orientation in the world, but I know a lot of women that are super powerful. And I started off by saying, this board stuff is ridiculous. All these companies, Enron, we're going out of business because of the bad board behavior. So a group of us got together and thought, we got to tackle this. So in around 2012, only 12% of all public company boards those board roles were women. Okay. 12%. So I want you to think about what the implication of that is. If it's a 7-person board, maybe you have one, but not that many organizations have one. Well, how many of you have ever been the only woman in the room? That's, it's all boys network. You're the only woman in the room. There are probably all white men that are running this organization. So what were the implications of that? Well, even though we actually had some good numbers, and we have for a long time that board diversity would make companies perform better, we actually had a big crisis on our hands. Groupthink was real. So what we did is we got together with all these other groups and we were like, how do we move the needle? And we decided we're going to work across the spectrum at different levels. We worked on legislative change. Senate Bill 826 was passed in California. We work with asset management firms like BlackRock and State Street and others, and NASDAQ, that are putting rules in place that require diversity on public company boards. I speak at organizations like this, so I call it movement building. Like, I want every one of you to think about going on a board at some point if you're not already. We train women on how to get on boards, to get all this, and I'm going to do a little bit of that today. You'll get a taste. So, if you're really resourceful and independent, you can do it on your own. And then we placed 34 women on corporate boards last year. And I want you to understand that working across the spectrum and all these different elements of this is how you get to impact and change. The other little thing I want you to know before I go into a couple slides and give you some specifics and details is that women starting in what we call middle essence, in your early to mid 40s, what you need in life changes. In your 30s, you're running up the ladder, trying to get the next promotion. Maybe you're raising your kids. And, whatever, you've heard of midlife crisis stuff. That's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about a reset where it's like, you know what? I got too many bruises. I've gotten as far up this ladder as I want to get doing the way I'm doing it. I'm going to start my own thing. I'm going to, that's a lot of people start their own businesses during that period of time. Lots of change happens in your early to mid 40s and continues for a while. The other thing that we know, and that's, I assume all of you are here and so many volunteers are here to support you, is that we're happier if we're doing things with other women and if we're having an impact. And I'm talking about, it amplifies dramatically in your early to mid 40s. You need that. As opposed to in your 30s, where it's like, you're much more transactional in life. There's just a developmental stage. So if you're not there yet, watch out. It kind of creeps up on you. Lots of great things about it, but life shifts. All right. So with that, I'm gonna share my screen and just give you a couple questions in this session today. What I want to do is give you a couple things to really get into action and think about. I want you to get out a piece of paper. I want you to be ready to get some work done, if you don't mind. So let's step into your power, wealth, and influence. All right, I'm not going to go too much over the mission. I kind of covered it. How women lead has all kinds of things around women's leadership. We also have a philanthropic effort. We have grants. We support women executive directors of nonprofits. If you're on the board of a nonprofit with a woman running it, send them to us because they need support. And we have a venture firm and a whole effort to disrupt the venture landscape for all of us. Culturally, everybody that's within our organization, we ask them to do the Girl Scouts Pledge with this credo as the framework. And I want to share this with you because my goal is all of you to take parts of this and make it your own. We need a better culture for women. It was worse for my cohort and my age than for a number of you. Women haven't always been that good with each other. And it's a super hostile environment. You think about whether you liked Hillary Clinton or not, whether you like, our vice president or not, you look at how people attack these women in leadership. We do it. We get sucked in and we do it. And we have to be actively working against that. So I invite you to make a commitment to each other in your organization that you will be fierce advocates for each other. This will be a safe place. No one's going to stab each other in the back. You are all going to be actively advocating fiercely for each other. Say yes to making introductions and helping each other. A lot of times I will ask, who makes the most introductions for you? And it's men. Women sometimes can act a little too careful with our contacts. And I actually think it holds us back, and we have to be better in this way. We have to make a commitment. Like I talk about board service, like if someone comes to you and asks you to go on a board and you can't do it, absolutely go find somebody else and tap them on the shoulder. You got to, it takes work. It's work. I promise you, I recognize that this is effort. but if we all do this for each other, it's better. Reinforce her voice when she speaks up. You've heard that about, women in the room, and she speaks up and no one listens to her. That also happens virtually. So in every way you can think of, whether it's just promoting someone's win on Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever you use, but reinforce the women around you. And finally, this is the hardest for a lot of us, but today we're going to talk mostly about this, is for you to be unabashedly visible. I don't know how many of you have this thing inside of you where you're like, I'm the behind the scenes person. I just get it done. I love supporting the person who's stepping out. You can't do that anymore. You can't do it for you, and you can't do it for my daughter. She's watching you and she's getting her cues from you, and you're telling her by your actions, by your own humility that might be overly expressed, that's where she belongs, in the back. So please do it for her if you're not going to do it for yourself. Okay, sorry to be so sappy. Okay, so today, I think we talked about the agenda a little bit, but we're going to get into some breakouts in a minute. I'm going to ask you some great questions. Then we're going to talk about the board landscape, and I'm going to give you a bunch, and we're going to get into action, and you're going to write a whole bunch of stuff about your own value to potentially bring to a board, etc. And then we're going to do another breakout, and then we're going to talk about investing. And again, we're going to do another breakout. And then hopefully you'll walk away with some action steps that you can take. So these are our learning objectives. I'm not going to get into this and read all these. You can read them. I'll have them send the slides out afterward. But I hope that when you walk out of here, you're really going to have a much better sense and a set of what actions you can take for venture and board work. All right. So first, I want you to just think, like, what does equity in the future look like to you? If we could have equity, what would your vision of that be? So when I step back and I think about it, for me, I start with, well, we'd have equal representation. We have 50% corporate board seats will be women. Right now, today, by the way, we moved from 12 to 32% in California, just so you know the win at the end of the long effort I talked about earlier. So we're getting there. We're huge progress. We're not quite there. That 50% of all venture decision-making would be by women, and the investments would be in companies run by women. And in order to get there, and some of the ripple effects or some of these other things I popped on here. So I would just say to you, like, what are the core things you'd like to see for equity in the future? And what is the ripple effect? Women hire 6 times more women when they run their own company. And they're the CEO. They're paid more equitably, right? There's a big ripple effect. When you invest in companies run by women, you make 26% more than you do when you invest in companies run by men. Black women return more than anyone. No surprise, they're the most educated Americans. So think about what's the change you want to see, and what would the ripple effect be, and how high can you get in your own vision for equity? So please just take a second, think about what that is for you. And one of the things I want to share with you as you do this is that it may not happen overnight, but you have to think big and act big in order to get where you want to go. So we'll have breakouts in a couple minutes, but I really want you to think about what would it be like for you to actually verbalize some really big vision that you have for the world that you'd like to see. And as here's a framework for all the stuff I just talked about, and a little bit of what's broken in the cycle. Only 2.4% of venture funding, 2.2, 1.9, depending on the day, of venture funding goes to companies founded by women, exclusively women. If you're a woman of color, the numbers are abysmal. There is significant bias in the process. Harvard did a study and found that men were asked, when they were being interviewed for potential investment, they were asked, how big can this get? How exciting? How fast can you get to a public offering? And women are being asked, how are you risk managing? basically all the things that say that are one, not inspiring or fun at all, but it also says, I don't really trust you. So I'm just going to like micromanage you to death in terms of all the things I'm going to ask of you. All right. One of the problems with this is that we don't have more women in decision-making and venture. We're not investing enough as investors, and we also are not leading and running decision-making processes in venture. And the result of some of this is we're not investing in the companies founded by women that become big and have an IPO where women make big money, or where women become the CEO or in the C-suite of the biggest companies in our country. We're only in, did you guys see what happened with WeWork? This guy who was a criminal and lied and cheated and lost massive amounts of investor money. I think he just got $350 million for his new gig. 2 years ago, there was a moment in time where only 30 Black women in the history of the United States had ever gotten an investment of $1 million or more. And this guy just got $350 million and he failed, and he's a criminal. So just saying. So let's step back a little bit and think about you. We talked about your vision for the world. I talked about some of the problems I want to solve. Maybe what are some of the problems you want to solve? And I want you to just think about for yourself, where do you want to be in 5 years? Do you want to be on a board? You want to be investing in venture? Do you want to be starting your own company? You want to run a venture firm that focuses on clean tech? What do you want to do? And how would you know if you get there? What's your measure of success? It might be a financial metric. It might be a specific title. And what are the big milestones you see ahead for yourself? Big things you need to accomplish in order to get to that place in 5 years. And one question I want to ask you is, because I think a lot of us can accidentally respond to opportunities in our lives, and we can lose track of our core values that will guide our decision-making about what roles we're willing to take and what we aren't and aren't willing to do. I can tell you right now, there's certain bullshit I don't put up with at this stage in my life. When you turn 50, it's very fun because you don't care what people think about you. And all of a sudden you have this renewed lease on like, oh, no, that's not how this is going to go. So always grounding in what are your values? And that can be both values for the world, but it's also like, hey, respect is everything to me. And if you don't show me respect and respect other people, I don't want to be in your orbit. And that's how I feel. I think it's just really important that we regularly dip into this, because you could accidentally go on the WeWork board because you really wanted that first board seat, and they're throwing women on the board the day before it goes public and then act like somehow the women didn't help them not make criminal decisions, right? What are those values that are going to influence where you go? And finally, like, what is the legacy you want to make? So we talked about your vision in the world. What's the role you want to play in that vision? Is there a legacy you want to play? Do you want to see every clean tech board is 50% women? You want to see more women running and getting funded to have IPOs in clean tech? I'm just making stuff up, but what is your legacy? All right. So I want to ask you now to just spend 5 minutes in a breakout. They're pretty small. And I want you to talk about, what is your vision briefly? I think everyone's going to get maybe a minute. What is your vision for where you want to go? And what are the big things you're going to tackle in order to get there? Establishing set of values, milestones. What are a couple of the big, the big rocks that you might tackle? Sound good?
I'll go. We were finishing up, and a person in our room quoted RBG saying, and she got me exactly where I live too, where they she's not looking for the time where the Supreme Court is half women. She's looking for the time when the Supreme Court is all women, because sometimes representation is more than half.
Amen, sister.
So well done.
You know what I always say, like the day we have mediocre women on corporate boards will be the day we know we won. Because right now is absolutely the outlier, who's, magical thinking, magical, life has made it possible. So, all right, ladies. Well, let's dive in now and talk about the board space, okay? There we go. I'm going to run through some of this pretty quickly. You'll get this data later, but I talked about going from 12 to 32%. Companies with diverse boards perform better financially. We have so much data, I can't even tell you that tells you this. So each of you work, I assume, in a company. Ask the question, how many women are on our board? Every time you hire a contractor, whatever it is, ask them how many women are on their board or how many women of color, or do asking the question, whether or not it's not like you're saying, I won't do business with you, but asking the question matters, because product recalls happen 3 times faster when you have women on a board, because you're disrupting groupthink. We know that it increases innovation, and women and people of color are paid more equitably. But I want to just talk about this groupthink thing. So I'm a 50-year-old white woman who's pretty politically left, living in California. If I get together with 10 other women who are just like me, we're going to be able to shortcut, make decisions really fast. But I bet some of you, the women in this room who are 30 years old would have a whole different perspective and interesting things to contribute. And we'd have to slow down. We'd have to listen to you, right? The other thing that might happen, especially if you have a really different perspective or a different political voice, is I'm going to actually prepare more for the meetings when I come, because I know I want to be able to hold my own and have the backup. One of the things we found, the research is telling us, is that when you have a diverse group, everyone is up-gamed. That's why companies perform so much better. Yes, women think differently, ask different questions, and are really disciplined about, research, reading the board materials. But everyone is up-gamed. All the men perform better. It's more work. They don't like it. They fight. I promise you. I know. But it's better for the company's performance, and therefore it should be legislated. But before we pass legislation in California on public company board diversity, the asset management firms that buy up half of the public company stock came out with what they call proxy statements. And there's a couple of reasons why I want you to know about this. Please pay attention. Every year, BlackRock, State Street, all these, those asset management firms, they will come out with a proxy, a statement about how they're going to do their voting and what their focus is. And sustainability, ESG, is one of the most important things that they've been tackling. And it's the biggest thing for investors in voting against proxies. I tell you this because if you read just every year, just Google BlackRock investor letter from Larry Fink. That will give you a read on what's coming down the pike and what opportunities now going to be available for you in boardrooms. 10 years ago, almost every corporate director on public company boards was a previous CEO or CFO. Today, we have significant requirements now from these asset management firms that is changing the composition of boards. You're required now to have a cybersecurity expert on the board, or you have to have a very extensive plan that they have to approve. That's an example of how you can start to really map your path and pay attention to what's going on. So a number of other players have been demanding that you have 2 women on your board before you go public. Goldman Sachs said they won't take anyone public. NASDAQ requires it. It's just important for you to know. This is just a highlight. In California, you're required, for the most part, if you have 7 or more board members, or 6 or more, you actually have to have 3 women on your board. 6 divided by 3, that's half. A half of those board members are women. And that means those women can have a voice. The only woman in the room is super hard, but when you get to 3, it's a whole new thing. We're working on these legislative response to some of these legal challenges. But the truth is, the train's left the station. We've had massive shifts in what we're looking at. Literally from 2018 alone, we doubled from 15 to 30, almost 32% March of this year. Look at this, you guys. This is huge. This is massive transformation in a very short amount of time. Took a lot of years to get to the point where all the influence is happening. And we had everyone started to really understand we have enough women who are ready. Like we have a huge database of corporate directors and candidates. So all that to say, there's huge shift and there's still opportunity. We have a bunch of companies that are still not meeting it. So if you're interested in going on a public company board or a private company board, now we'll talk about those in just a sec. This is a great time for you to start throwing your hat in the ring. A lot of these companies, these boards, expanded the board to be able to meet the requirement of the legislation. That means as people rotate off those boards or terms end, they're not going to replace them. So it's just an important thing to think like this is a moment right now where lots of women are being invited onto those boards. All right. So just a couple other things. Public company boards, the big ones we all know about, right? Those are easy to legislate, but in California and across the country, the vast majority of all boards are private company boards. 900,000. We actually have 200,000 with over 50 employees. So they're not mom and pop shops at all. So there's tons of board seats available in those companies. And venture-backed companies are actually in much worse shape because of what I've talked about. We're not leading in venture. Therefore, we are not, one, I'm a VC. I take a board seat when I make an investment. And then when I'm on that board, when we start to have independent directors, I can recommend and bring in a woman. If we are not playing in venture, we are missing an opportunity at the beginning of a board's life cycle when most of the change can happen. Okay. Here's just like, what are the profiles of what people are looking for? It's changed a lot over the last couple of years, and ESG is a big focus. So how do you get on a board and who influences it? Yes, you can use a search firms that know about you. It's always a good thing to have Spencer Stewart know you're out there and you're looking for a board seat and you're qualified. That said, the vast majority of board seats, almost 90%, are through your networks. So being involved in women in clean tech and sustainability is how you're going to get your board seat in the future. I promise you, if you guys focus on this and support each other and live a credo, your version of the credo, someone in this room is going to be able to help you get a board seat at some point in time. Your networks really matter. And I'll walk through a little bit of this in a second. But just so you know, there's a nominations and governance committee on a board. And they generally are the ones who vet and recommend people, but a CEO and the C-suite and the chair of the board can be really valuable. Any of you who are anywhere near HR or technology or finance, you know, if you're somewhere close to the C-suite or in the C-suite, you can raise your hand and say, I want to help us populate the board with the next director. So there's roles for you to play in your own leadership within your own company. And another source is if you ever work with Deloitte or any other service provider that's like that, they're often working with boards to help them find, restructure a board and find those board members, especially in pre-IPO companies. Remember, you can legislate and mandate things for public companies. What we now are having is pressure from the public side to say, you have to have 2 women on your board and you can't put them on the day before. So there's downward pressure now that's happening, and those consulting firms, the lawyers and the accountants are often asked to make recommendations, especially for boards like SPAC boards. Yes?
Yes, Julie, you have a few good questions here that are great. I actually answered one of them.
Okay.
The first question is, are all board seats paid? And I said to the individual, no, to Justine, as a matter of fact, some are, but not everything is paid. The second question is, how does one know when a board seat is open? Yeah.
Okay, so I would just add a little color for what you just said. Public company boards they have to disclose how much they pay. On average, they pay $308,000 for a board seat. You get more if you're the chair of a committee. Okay. Cash is less common in companies that are venture backed or private. They're more likely to give you equity. And if you're the VC, you don't get anything, you get your money invested to do a good job. So paying attention to that equity and negotiating well, even if you're on an advisory board. If any of you have been asked to go on an advisory board that might not yet be on a corporate board yet, those advisory boards, I ask for equity, and I also give it a boundary, and I say, if you use more than this amount of time, you have to pay me my hourly rate of $700 an hour. So important for you guys to think about already, even if you haven't quite gotten there yet, because it'll happen. So do ask for money. I'm sorry, what was the second question? It was about,
how does one know when a board seat is open?
Okay. Well, really, it's largely research. I mean, there's networking. That's how you find out. You stay in front of people. But you can go on to a proxy statement and see when someone's going to term off. So all of the public companies are required to have public disclosure of who's on their board and what their terms are, if they have term limits. So that is, heavily researched way to find some of that out. I also want to show you, just so to help you a little bit with your research, there's an organization that we have funded. And it's called 50/50 Women on Boards. Okay. And they do some programming. I'm not 100% sure I can vouch for it, but their research is an important source for all of us. So you see at the bottom, it says research, and then I go to directory. All right. You go down here and you can filter by a company name, number of women, a sector. So let's see if we can find something in clean tech or sustainability. You see anything that might, which would you pick? Someone chime in. Energy?
Energy is good.
Okay. All right. Let's find some energy boards. Which state? Any states?
Well, since I asked, how about Arizona?
Okay. Let's go to Arizona. Is that what that is? AZ? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if we have any energy companies in Arizona. So this should be all public companies. This data is provided by Equilar, which is an important partner for us. Okay. All right. So there's, well, there aren't any. So sorry. It looks like I can't see any. So I'm gonna just say any. How about that? So California has the most public company boards, and I think it's New York, Chicago, or Illinois, and maybe Texas or something. All right. So this is how you look at this resource, right? Amedics has 6 people on their board, and 2 of them are women. So they're at 33%. That's actually doing pretty well, but Alto has a problem, Alto Ingredients. So you can go in here and you can get more information. And this could be an opportunity for you to say, this is research, right? But it's like, look up their proxy statements, see who's on their board, and write them and say, I see that you're not, it looks like you might need some more, fantastic women in energy to go on your board, or whatever that, their focus is. And I'd love to talk to your Nom and Gov chair. Like, that should be public information. You can follow that yellow brick road. So hopefully you can see how this is, potentially a good resource for you. All right.
There's another one for you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia, for responding to Ella with her question. It was dealing with resources and classes available to prepare us for a board seat. Yeah. And Olivia answered that. And then also, I think there were some resources you gave, Julie, that was showing that workshops or something was at the bottom of 50/50 there.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure I can vouch for them. We actually probably do the least expensive board training because we're a nonprofit. A lot of people are making a lot of money offering them. As you can tell, I like things to be interactive. I like you walk out learning something. I'm an adult learning methodology expert. You should check out our board readiness program and see if that's right for you. It really works. A lot of people love it. We've trained thousands of women. So, and we place people on boards with a full service kind of activity. So look at howwomenlead.com. We have a board readiness training that's coming up in September. So,
you have one more. I'm sorry, Julie. Elizabeth, if you can quickly unmute yourself, because I got the first part of the question, but you also have a little bit of a discussion there about VP or hired, and you wanted to know if it's true. If you take yourself off mute, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi. So I was curious, you mentioned that kind of once you are qualified, this is all of the stuff you would do, but I was curious kind of what determines whether you're qualified to serve on the board. The reason I was asking is because I had had a discussion with somebody about kind of as I was planning my career at my current company that, oh yeah, it'd be great if you got to VP because most boards won't take people unless they're VP or higher position.
Okay.
Is that true?
Not really. Let me give you some color.
Okay. Sure,
If you
please.
want to be public company boards, as I said, are the smallest number of opportunities. They're the biggest, they're the highest of the pecking order. In general, if you have not been in the C-suite of a public company, you're not going to get on a public company board. I'm not qualified to go on a public company board. I've never even worked in a public company. Private boards, especially the smaller ones, shouldn't care at all about that. They should care, what can you bring to the table? Are you going to meet their needs with your unique expertise and network of connections? So it all depends. And you know, a dirty little secret, you know, I talked about venture. The first board I went on, I made a $25,000 investment in a new startup. And I said, I want you to put me on your board. And asked that, and she said, well, I might have to kick you off when the bigger VCs come in. I was like, that's fine. I don't care. I just want to be on your board. So, you know, money, power and influence and networks matter. And of course, what you know, she wouldn't have had me go on the board if I wasn't a good fit in terms of what I know either, right? So it's the answer is, you know, yes, and you know, it depends. But don't think that some of what I talk about is about public company boards earlier. Private company boards, you know, it's all across the spectrum. If you start a company tomorrow and recruit people for your board, you probably don't want someone who's on the board of Alphabet. You probably want someone who's going to get work done and actually be a good advisor to you and have knowledge about your company area, right? Okay, so I want you to get into work again. Some of you are probably already doing this. Some of what we do in board readiness is some of this stuff, right? Why are you interested in going on a board? And write it down. Why do you think what value can you add and why are you needed? What would you bring to a board? And think about the boards that you might know. One of the biggest challenges in earlier stage companies is talent. Do you know all the women in clean tech? Maybe because you can help them source the next C-suite talent, you are magic for them. Have you been along for the ride, running or being in the, you know, early days with a company that started and has grown to a certain size? Right there. If I'm starting a company, I want someone who gets what it's like to be entrepreneurial and get that founder journey going. It is brutal in those first couple of years. It's a whole different game when it's a big company, right? You need an advisor who's been around and who knows how to get there. My guess is a bunch of you have been around the block and been watching growth trajectories and can contribute about that. Now I want you to think about if you were going to go on 5 boards, and I'm talking about something reasonable for you, and maybe it's a concept, but it would be better if you have a name. What would that board be? So, and I want you to write it down. You can put it in chat. That's what I make people do in our board readiness program, because it'll make it a little more real. And then we're going to get into action. And I'm going to show you what to do with that information. So now I want you to think about who can get you connected to the people on that board. That I said 87% comes from networks. So does anyone want to share one of your 5 or 2 of your 5?
Olivia, I think you just posted something.
What do you think, Olivia? Give me the name of the company. Somebody, pick a company, any company. It's not a quiz. There's no grading. Come on. Tata Clean Health Board of Directors. All right, here we go. So you look up the board of directors, you can find it in all kinds of different ways, right? So, okay, here's a group of people. Google them, LinkedIn them, see if you know them or you know how to get to them. All right. Who knows Rajiv Sabharwal or Varsha, right? So this is how you start to think about it. You go onto your LinkedIn and you literally just get into action and you go find out who knows those people. All right. So I want to ask all of you now to go into a breakout, and I want you to talk about what are the boards that you want to go on very briefly. Just name it out loud. Okay. Just get in and say, what are the kind of board I want to go on, and what is the value I would bring to that board? Okay. Answer those two questions. I can pop it in the chat. I'll check it out. Welcome back, everyone. Any big ahas for you guys? Anything you want to share with the group? All right, I'm going to share something. One of the women in our group said, I just graduated. I'm not sure this is the right thing for me to plan for. And we talked about like the majority of the people I know got their first board seat because they were on a nonprofit board with somebody else who tapped them on the shoulder. So the moral of the story is not that nonprofit boards are a qualifier to go on a corporate board. They do, though, teach you governance. We were talking a little bit in our group. In fact, I was a terrible governor in the beginning because I'm an operator and I wanted to tell them what to do and fix it because they were bugging me. And learning how to ask the right questions and really support the leader and be patient is, that's really the starting point with governance. There's all kinds of other stuff too, but learning your role, and you can do that in a nonprofit board, hopefully, because sometimes they're dysfunctional, just like all boards, but then scaffold yourself to a certain point where you get on a nonprofit board with powerful people, with women who and men who are on corporate boards. So, you look at the boards of, Girl Scouts actually of America, and even Northern California, I think, has a pretty influential board, and even their nonprofit, their executive director is on a corporate board. So, you still need to care about the nonprofit mission, but all that is how you could scaffold earlier in your career. Any other ahas or questions?
Julie, there's a question from Sabrina, and then it says, what's the difference between advisory board and the board of directors?
Excellent. A board of directors is legally responsible and governing the organization. That means they hire and fire the CEO. You can get taken to court. In fact, if you're a public company director, you will get taken to court in some way. It happens, and you just have to be ready for that. So there's big governance responsibility on a board of directors. An advisory board generally doesn't have the legal risk. They're using you just for your expertise and your support or your connections. So I think they're kind of more fun sometimes, because the stakes aren't so high. The bigger the board, the bigger the stakes. You don't want to be on one of these boards when they get, imagine being on the Tesla board when some of the stuff that's been happening, happens, like, or being on a bank board in 2009. I know people who are on bank boards and they literally were woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Anka, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Julie. So I know you mentioned that some board positions are paid, but I think for some you have to pay to be on the board. If it's a
nonprofit or pay. You don't pay, and you should honestly, guys, just to be clear,
fundraise.
In nonprofits and earlier stage startups, raising money is a big part of it, and you need to be ready to put your own skin in the game. I always say you should give a stop and think gift if you're on a nonprofit board. It should be something that you're like, okay, let me plan for this. That's important. That said, it's that's why you should do something you care about. I think, I had my adult children over for dinner the other day, and my daughter was giving me a hard time because I was saying, you're responsible to give back in the world because of all the gifts you've been given and all of the, strength and things and opportunities you've had. That's my soapbox moment. We're all responsible to make the world a better place. It makes you happier in life. So give money, give 10% of your income at some point in time. It's really important. Okay. Now let's get into more mapping. All right. Oh my gosh, I need to move. I have to move some things on my screen. Okay, there we go. All right. Have you been on a nonprofit board? What is the size and maturity maybe of that board? Have you advised a startup? These are just thought questions. You don't have to, you can write them down if you want, but have you advised a startup yet? Have you had a friend who asks you for advice all the time about their startup, but doesn't put you on the advisory board? I can tell you a lot of people that attend a session like this, they walk out and they say to someone who asks them questions in the parking lot at the kids' school every night, hey, listen, I've loved being involved in helping you and think about your company's growth. Why don't you have me come on your board? Have you ever presented to your own company board for a meeting? Raising your hand and offering to help with a presentation for whoever is going to present the next ESG report or audit or whatever to the board. That's an example of something that you can be involved in. You can say, I don't need to speak, but I'm happy. I would like to be in the meeting. Like, you can ask. They may say no, but you can't hurt to ask. And that shows your leadership. Another question I have for you is, like, do you know what the role of a board is? And actually, does anybody here want to take a stab at what the role of the board is? Okay, I don't know if I have a slide on it, but let me tell you the answer. Your responsibility is to protect the company, its investors, and its assets. In a nonprofit, literally, you are the representative for the public interest, because this is a public benefit corporation at this point. It's owned by the public, not by anybody else. So you're actually being stewards for the entire country, city, state, whatever. And so you hire and fire the CEO. You make sure that the company is protected in terms of risk, that there are good policies in place. You make sure there's good policies around ESG, that might be hiring or promotion or other questions around those kinds of things within a company. So you protect the company from getting in trouble or going down the wrong path. So those are the kinds of highest level order things a board is responsible for. And making sure in a nonprofit that you're meeting your mission, the organization's mission, because literally you have to report on that every year to the government in your 990 report. And another thing for you to be thinking about is, if you are on a nonprofit board or a for-profit board, what committees are you going to serve on and start to have some expertise around? An audit committee is very little work. All you do is pick an auditor and listen to what the auditor has to say. You don't do much more. Compensation committee can be a lot of work, because you have to compare the compensation of that leader or the C-suite with the market, and et cetera. Nominations and governance is, for those extroverts in the world, like in the room like me, I love being part of nominations and governance, but the responsibility is to make sure you have the right board in place. So here are a couple other questions. What kind of company size, type, and life cycle is right for you in your experience? I said earlier, I don't know which group I was in, if it was a breakout or not, but I'm not qualified to go on the board of a public company. I don't want to do it either, but I have never worked in a public company. I certainly haven't worked in the C-suite. But I am a venture capitalist, and I've started and run a bunch of things. So I am on a lot of small company boards, and I love that. It's very fun. So what's right for you? And defining it, writing it down is pretty important. All right, let's talk about how you do your networking. I talked about some of this earlier, but I want you to think, like, if you're really very serious about this and you've identified what boards you want to go on, make a list of 25 people you're going to go touch base with and engage with. And this is just to inspire your thinking. And you write those people and you say, here's my value proposition, and this is what I'm looking for. All right, I'm going to give you one other little tip. If I said to you, can you recommend a woman in technology to me to be on my board? You'd be like, well, what do you mean a woman in technology? Give me more details, right? You need to narrow the aperture when you have communicate with people so they remember you. If you say, I'm a woman in tech, I don't remember you. If you say, I'm a woman in clean tech, I might remember you. If you say, I'm a clean tech expert that does this, you know, who's worked in the finance side of clean tech, now I'll start to remember you. And the next time somebody says they need an expert in finance, I might call you up and say, I know that you're a clean tech finance person, but would you consider going on a bank board because you've got finance expertise, right? Other people will open the aperture, but they won't remember unless you give them something narrow that's a hook. Just human behavior. Okay. Here's just, and I think you're going to get these slides from your group afterwards. These are like all these matchmaking organizations that I, to a certain extent, can vouch for. Some of them have limitations of how you get involved. Some of them cost a little bit of money. I would just say, be very wary if someone calls you. Someone called me and said, well, people pay $25,000 and we help them get a board seat. That's not how it works. Do not pay someone $25,000 to get you a board seat. If you go to a class and it costs $500, that's one thing. But be very careful because there's a bunch of vultures out there that are taking advantage of women's interest in this moment in time. New role, for example, that's how you get on European boards, and they get a lot of women really find value and get opportunities. Just in case any of you want to go on a board in Paris, because I know that would be hard. All right. So this is just like a summary of some of the stuff that we just talked about. So I hope you're starting to feel like you can map this out a little bit. Let's go into breakouts, and then we're going to go back and talk about venture investing because it's connected to boards and it's connected to power and influence. But let's first go into breakouts and let's answer these questions. What domain industry expertise can you leverage in the boardroom? What's your timeline? And what are the 5 boards you want to join? We kind of talked about some of this. Let's just do a fast breakout, just 5 minutes. Any ahas or questions? I have one question in the chat I'm going to respond to.
Sure.
Anybody? Yeah.
I had an aha.
Okay.
Ella from our group kind of helped to point it out. So I wasn't sure really what to say I could bring to the table, but my job is a program manager. So I function a lot in bringing a lot of cross-functional people together and getting a decision. And so
That's
I think
awesome.
that's a really clear thing I could write down and add. So very excited.
Excellent.
Thank you, Ella.
Great. So one of the questions right as we were leaving is about trends in board committees. Hold on, my best friend is calling me. Got to tell her to go away. Who's about to bark at us. And it's kind of aligned with the things I was mentioning earlier. I mean, for the most part, those committees I already said, audit, nom and gov, and comp are the biggies. But ESG and cybersecurity are more and more the kind of committees that you're seeing prop up. Sometimes they're not standing committees; they'll be temporary for a reason. But those are 2 biggies I'm starting to see more of. You have to have any other in risk, generally risk. Okay. All right, let's talk about your money. I want you to just take a quick second and think about your relationship to money. Did you hear any messages growing up about money being the root of all things that aren't so good? What are the other messages you've heard? You've heard messages about like money talks.
Don't grow on trees.
What'd you say?
Don't grow on trees.
Doesn't grow on trees. Yeah. What else?
You'll never have enough.
It's not in good taste to talk about money.
Right. Whatever you do, don't talk about sex, politics, or money.
Yeah.
Religion.
More money, more problems.
More money, more problems. Oh, interesting. Okay. I think it's important that you actually step back and meditate, go for a walk, sit in the ocean and think about what are the implications of that for you? I grew up in a family that was upper middle class, and I rejected this focus on money. And to me, there was the way it was handled in my home of my family of origin was gross. And I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm going to go be a social worker. I'm going to literally try and make the world a better place. So I actually have had an interesting journey wrestling with money. There's a book that I read at a certain point in time that really sort of reset my thinking and talked about it's a tool, it's a vehicle, it means nothing. It's not tied to your value. It is literally just a trading mechanism. And to sort of walk away and think, what's the game of this, as opposed to how it's related to my worth, or it's bad, or it's whatever, all those cultural messages we get. It's good to think about it because it impacts your investing behavior. All right. So do you have a financial goal for yourself? And have you written it down, and have you done it recently? And I would just say, write a number down. Where do you want to be in 5 years or 10 years? Give yourself, to put down a name, and you're not going to have to tell people this. We're not going to make you disclose this in a breakout. But where do you need to be? And while you think about that, I want you to remember the way wealth is made in this country. Well, why don't you guys tell me, how do you think the most money is made in this country? You guys have seen all those dumb little TikToks. You know what the answer is. Come on.
Passive income.
Right. That's one way. Well,
Investments.
yeah, the biggest infusion of money, you guys, some of you may have experienced. Anyone been through an IPO before? Like my daughter she's been at Uber for 6 years. She was there 3 months before Travis Kalanick was fired. She was there when they IPO'd. And all of a sudden she had more money than I'd ever seen in my bank account in my life. So the win of investing in these kinds of assets like startups is huge. And that's why venture capital is seen as such a sexy power play. It is generally the belief that 10% of your money that you are investing should be in alternative assets, like investing in venture or real estate, something like alternative to the stock market. And just in the last, how many of you have had good stock market portfolio performance in the last 6 months? Most of us have been disappointed and stopped looking at our accounts because it was very depressing. Well, in the same period, our very first venture firm our fund closed in December of 2020, and we started investing. By June of this year, we'd sold 2 companies at 3 times the value of what we invested in them. Think about that. Stock market's crashing, venture's up. I'm not trying to sell you on venture. I'm trying to just give you the perspective of diversification and how real money's made. Yes, over your lifetime, compound interest in the stock market can grow. That's not where the big money is. The big money, the multiples of 100x. You guys know this, right? It's just scary to start thinking about it. And I'm going to give you the unscary story in just a sec. So I want you to you said what your goal is, and I want you to think about like what percentage of your funds might you want to be investing in an alternative asset. The other thing I want you to think about is your own values. We talked about those earlier today. I assume most of you have a value around something around climate because you're involved in the work that you do. If you have a value around climate, have you asked whoever's managing your portfolio, your investments, your retirement money, your donor advised fund, any investments that you have you asked them what is the ESG measure? Or do you have a climate fund? Do you have a fund focused on women? There's a company called Nia Capital that just came out with an really good ESG mutual fund. So you can say to we talked about someone who had some money at Fidelity. You can talk to your Fidelity person and say, check out the ESG fund through Nia Capital. So lots of opportunities to just ask the right questions and start to allocate your portfolio going forward. Now, we talked earlier about how if you're involved in venture, you can potentially get a board seat with that investment. Well, let's back up and talk a little bit about venture and also about investing in female founders. This is my jam, obviously. Everything I do, you can tell. Morgan Stanley did a report and said we're leaving $4.4 trillion on the table that investors like me and you could make by not investing in companies founded by women. Only 2% of all venture dollars go to companies founded exclusively to women. And the thing is that there's dissonance there. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, I don't know if any of you voted for Trump, but I hope not. It's like, Trump, I don't get it. Like, women are more capital efficient, more performance driven, and have higher revenues, and make more for their investors, and yet we're not investing in them. So we have got to, and this is too much detail. We have got to start investing in these companies founded by women. And I'm going to tell you, one of the things that happened when I first started imagining starting a venture fund is I talked to some women VCs, like the older women who are in this market and the first people to be in the space. And even the women VCs said to me, well, there are not enough women starting venture backable companies for this to be a good strategy. I'm like, what are you talking about? In our little new firm that we just started in the end of 2020, we've just in the last year, the last 12 months, I've seen over 600 deals of great. And you can see this chart over here on the right. So I'm just telling you this to say, like, people will say stupid stuff to you that they don't know what they're talking about. So don't believe everything you hear just because somebody seems like they have some positional influence or authority. The other thing I'm going to tell you is, you know, there are women of color. I have a serious commitment to women of color. 70% of the deals we see are companies founded by non-white female founders, and they're fantastic. They're all over the country, and they're experienced entrepreneurs. So I'm not sure all of you know about how you get funded in a startup as a woman founder, right? But here's just how you can think about how funding works in the life cycle of companies. First and foremost, you know, if I start a nail salon, I might get a loan to buy some equipment. But no one's going to invest in my nail salon and think they're going to make money. It's not a scalable company, but I might take a loan, or I might do something with crowdfunding. And I don't know if you guys have ever done crowdfunding, but you can basically say, I have this nail salon that I want to start. And if I get 100 people to put $500 in, each person who puts $500 into my crowdfunding thing to raise money to buy my chair in my office or whatever, everyone's going to get free nails done for 2 years. So it's kind of like a gamification where it's like you're kind of investing, but you know, it's a trade almost. And you can also get grants. If any of you want to start your own company, do not forget about grants. It's a huge source, especially right now. There's a I mean, you guys know the climate bills and stuff. There's tons of money out there. We've invested in a company called Silvatex. They just got $3 million from the feds as a grant. In this space, there's venture firms get a reduction in taxes and some benefits by investing in companies run in Cleantech. All right. The next thing that can happen is I'm starting my company and it is scalable. It ultimately will get venture funding. Most of us get money from our friends and our family, F&F first. So you go to 10 people, you say, could you all put $1,000 each in or $10,000 each in? And I would just say like that's how a lot, and it's called an angel, you're being an angel investor. Unfortunately, if you're making an angel investment, there's risk for you. You have to decide if this is a good investment, and you're very concentrated in that one thing. Even if you do 5 investments in different companies, it's pretty darn concentrated. Now, some of you were talking about venture. You think you have to know a lot about finance. This is the departure. I know a lot about finance. I know how to pick and manage those investments because I'm a venture capitalist. All right. If you want to invest in venture, you just need to say, does Julie know what she's talking about? Does she have a good track record? Do I believe in her thesis? Do I think that she's going to make a good decision in picking the companies and investing the money? It's just like your finance guy picking your mutual funds and your stock portfolio. I'm the one who picks the 20 different companies that are going to be in this portfolio. So you're diversified and you don't actually have to know anything about how to pick a company or finance. It's just like any other investment. There's some higher risk because all the companies could fail but it can happen in other parts of your investments. But there's a pretty darn big upside reward potential. If you invest in venture, ask that before you make the investment, even if you're not going to change your mind, you're still going to invest there. It's just like boards. Ask them how many women CEOs are in your portfolio. It changes people's behavior when you ask. They tell their boss. All right. After angel investing, people will get venture investments, and they're in multiple stages. Seed investment is usually the early stages. Then you start, if you guys have heard Series A or Series B, like there's definitions around what each of those stages looks like. But eventually, basically, I'm trying to pick a company where I know I can get a 10 times return, and I hope I can get 100 times return. Okay, that's the strategy for this kind of investing in this stage. And then, of course, you can have an IPO, an initial public offering. And when that happens, everybody makes money if you still have ownership of the company. And that's where you have BlackRock buy up half the stock. And then you go, get on a mutual fund or, get that kind of opportunity. So this is just an opportunity for you to know if you're in the beginning of your journey and you actually won't really want support around thinking about your investing strategy and starting to explore venture investing. There's an organization we love called Invest for Better, and they have circles. You could do a Women in Cleantech Invest for Better circle, and you guys could just start learning. There's no commitment whatsoever. I think you pay $100 to be part of a circle, and they give you curriculum and a coach. So something interesting for you to think about. We also have classes on what's like the couple slides I just showed, like deeper dive. What's the lingo? What do you need to know?
Money is power.
I know it is. But we're not going to talk about it right now. I'll send this to you guys so you can all see it. So here's my venture firm. I just want you to know this is a snapshot of all the headshots of everybody in the very first close of our first fund. Look at all these beautiful women. Is this what you think venture looks like? And can you see yourself here? Because I think this looks like this room that we're in. You guys could all come together and do some cool stuff. I have some other ideas for you about what you could do as a collective, but we'll hold that for another day. I just want you to know the kind of companies that we're investing in. Here's a couple examples. Check out Gaiascope if you haven't checked them out. Gaiascope they modeled out and predicted the energy crises in Texas. They're trying to create an entire new investment strategy and investment platform for the power grid. And they have a hedge fund that you can invest in today. It's very cool, interesting company. It's not on here. We invested in a company called Silvatex that is using biofuels to create the lithium battery, or the cathodes that go in the lithium battery. Lithium batteries are 56%, 56% of the cost in a Tesla, in an electric vehicle. This strategy reduces the climate impact to, very minimal, the time to market and the cost by 50% each. So really cool company. All right. I don't think we're going to have time for all this because I want you guys to get one more breakout. So I'll send all this to you. But when I first thought about investing in venture, somebody said to me, "Oh, are you an accredited investor?" I was like, "Oh God, I don't have time to go get accredited for anything. I'll wait." Well, you don't have to get accredited. It's just, you have to actually make some money in order for it to be safe for you to invest in venture, which could be held. Our fund life is modeled at 10 years. So you have to have enough money. You're not going to need it tomorrow and overcommitted, right? So it's $200,000 a year as an individual, $300,000 as a family. or $1 million in assets outside of your home, which could be your retirement money. What do you guys think when you see this? Does that sound like you? Can any of you do that right now? I'm not asking you to commit. I'm just saying, like, you know, I think a lot of people think you have to have lots of money to invest in venture. Here's just a couple things for you to be thinking about when you do think about investing in companies. This is what I think about. Can it scale? Will it grow really fast so that I can sell it or have an exit and something return money to my investors? So if you're starting a company, you need to be able to show me how you're going to make multiples of my money. Another thing is you think about, is this an aspirin or is it a vitamin? A vitamin is like, I'll take it if I have time. I don't really need it. An aspirin is like, God, I'm in pain. I got to fix it. So that's what we think about when you think about companies that you might want to invest in, because you want to invest in companies that really change, that solve for a need. Like, you never knew that the pandemic was coming. We didn't know, you know, if the markets crashed this year, we could have predicted it, but nobody wanted to pay attention. You know, none of us want to have eyes open about the cyclical nature of these downturns. If you are an aspirin, everyone still needs to buy you, even if you're in a bad place. And I would just say the other thing is it's not a lifestyle company. Some people want to start a great company and run it for 25 years because they want to have flexibility. That's a little bit of what you think about when you think of a lifestyle company. That's not really venture backable.
Julie,
Okay.
the name of that lithium battery company was
Silvatex. I'm going to pop it into the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. And you saw Gaia Scope as well. Check them out. You guys will love them. Any of you guys you guys will love them. So I think we need to move on and go into our final breakout group. So I want you to think about what are your goals and talk about what are your goals. You don't have to be specific about dollars. What are your goals in terms of your investing? What percentage do you want to consider putting into an alternative asset like angel investing or venture? And how would you make a decision about what kind of a firm you would choose to make those decisions about your money? What are the values that you would bring to the table? So investments, are they aligned with your values? Ask if you have diversity and if venture capital is in that mix, okay? If you invest in venture firms, ask them how many women of color are in leading companies in your portfolio. Ask your company if the company invests in venture. A lot of these companies that are large Cleantech companies probably have a venture arm. Ask them how many women are in your portfolio. Okay, it'll change Ella's behavior if everybody in her firm starts saying how many women are running, funds or firms in your portfolio. Start advising startups, and you could join a special purpose vehicle fund like the one we just talked about, but there's also a structure that's called Gangels, started like Gay Angels. It's a couple white guys that run it. So whatever, that's another thing you might want to look at. But they actually have a vehicle where you don't have to put that much money into the fund. And you can start to play in venture or in sort of this SPV world of venture. So they do pretty well. So I can sort of vouch for them, but I'm not an investment advisor. Talk to your advisor. Don't take this as a recommendation and come back and tell me you didn't make money. All right. I'll just remind you about the connection between venture and board seats, and then let's just have a little action plan for each of you before you leave. Investors take board seats. The earlier you get in, there's a higher probability of a seat that you can take. Ultimately, a group of venture investors who are the early board members in a company will eventually look for somebody who is what they call an independent director. And you also can think about, how do I position myself with relationships with venture firms so they call on me to start to play that board role, okay? So build the relationships and tell them I'm ready to sit on the board when you need an independent director. Finally, I want to say, of all the women who are accredited investors in our country, only 5% of us are investing in venture. We're not making the money we need to make. We're not leveraging our money to get board opportunities and to have power and influence over things that are important to us, like clean tech and women. All right. Let's see here. So finally, here's some actions in addition to those ones I just talked about, other actions you can take today. Build your network. Prioritize putting board service on your radar, even if you start with a nonprofit board and then an advisory board and work your way up. Start investing, even if you're doing crowdfunding or something like that, even like Kiva, it's like a cute little loan kind of thing you can do. And be an advocate for everyone around you. So here's some things that are coming up for us. We have a board readiness workshop that starts on September 7th. It's 5 sessions. It's extremely successful, and encourage you to think about that. We have another program called Mentoring for the Boardroom. It's a great couple women. There's kind of like a lunchtime fireside chat. And you can find out more about how to get involved with How Women Lead by joining a free ecosystem call that we offer once a month. And then we have a couple things for investing. We have getting started in angel and venture investing. We have a bunch of Latina VCs that are coming in September for an event. And then we also have an event about how to level up your financial planning, how to find a financial planner you can trust. It's not only about Latinas, it's just focused, the people who are putting it on as a group of Latina powerhouse leaders. All right, my friends, this was super fun to spend time with you. I hope you got value here. My whole goal is for you to run the world, because I can't do it all, and I'm getting a little older than you. So thank you all for your time today. If you have any final questions, Vasudha, I'm going to let you decide if you have any time for me to answer anything.
Priscilla, do we have time for a few questions? Do we have people waiting on answers?
We have one question from Simona. She's asking, when you evaluate a venture capital, what kind of criteria you should be looking at?
Okay. Well, we started this whole session off talking about your values. First, check in with your values. Is it about their relationship to climate? You can ask the venture firm. You can find venture firms focused on climate. You can find venture firms and say, how many investments, or do you actually look at the climate impact of your investments? How many women? How many people of color? Is there a geography you care about? Literally go through and think about all the impact that these firms have and just ask the questions. You have so much power and influence with your money, ladies. Use it. Don't pretend like the risk is too much for you. You all are so young. I'm looking at all this screen. You're young enough to use your money for power and influence for your future. Okay, I think we did it, Vasudha.
That's
Julie, thank you so much. Again, this was wonderful. I learned so much. I'm sure everybody else did. Thank you so much. Again, couldn't have put this event together without our fantastic volunteers. Joey helped direct the event and worked very closely to put it together. So did the whole team of WCS volunteers, Sapna, Stephanie, Kripa, Oakley, Priscilla, Jessica, Kruti, Paige, Pamela, Raphael, Sanjum, Divya, Anka, thank you so much for your time and your efforts. We can't run this organization without you. Next slide, just a quick reminder to everybody. We have wonderful events coming up in the next 6 weeks. Pole dancing, volunteer appreciation event, private screening for WCS members, and then finally leading up to WCS talks. Hope to see you all there. And I think we have one last slide. We do have a newsletter and a website that you can sign up for, and we are very active on social media. So please find us and keep in touch. And thank you again for your time. Julie, again, this was fantastic. Thanks so much.
Can't wait to see you in the boardroom, ladies.